Bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs.
Bows and TKOs. We are live, episode 63 coming at you here in the Valley. I'm your host, Shane Gillette, for the weekly MMA podcast, streaming anywhere you get podcasts and videos on YouTube. We have a solid show this week. Not a ton because there is no UFC action this weekend, but we have some fights that have been announced. We have the PFL Playoff Recap to set up for their championships. Dana White Contender Series Episode 3. And then we will recap the Apex Fight Night 96 event that happened this past weekend. Before we jump in, I'm rocking the Journey shirt from the concert. Awesome concert at Chase Stadium where the Diamondbacks play. I got to see Steve Miller Band, Journey, and Def Leppard. As a kid, I almost went to their concerts a few different times. Living in the middle of nowhere in Montana, there's not a lot of big venues, so usually we'd have to drive 3 hours to Spokane or 8 hours to Seattle to catch them. Never made it happen, but now I got to see all three in one event. Got to go with my girlfriend, and it was one hell of a show. I really had a good time. And the cool thing is even on the way to the concert out of the parking lot, saw someone that looked familiar with the fro. I was like, this has got to be Alex Caceres. You forget, he fights at 145 pounds, probably walks around at 160 pounds. How small these dudes are. I'm like, I don't know. And then I'm like, Alex? He's like, yep. Super cool dude. Obviously, he's known to be, a very big student of martial arts, very respectful and humble. He was exactly that. Me and my girlfriend walked with him and his girlfriend on the way. We were chatting about the MMA lab, some of the things with his career. Really awesome guy. I would love to have him on the podcast once we start doing fighter episodes here in the future. But regardless, great concert. Got to meet Alex Caceres. That was awesome. He trains here in the lab, so he's a local guy. And then this weekend, I'm going to Dodgers, Diamondbacks. They only have a few games left in the season tickets as the Diamondbacks are making a season ticket playoff push. And then my childhood college team, the Wyoming Cowboys, a.k.a. Pokes, are going to be taking on the Arizona State Sun Devils. So nice little sports weekend. College football is coming back. NFL Sunday next weekend. Lots of fun things in the sports world. But let's jump into MMA. Some fights that have been announced. We have Beloyi Aoki taking on Chris Duncan September 28th. That should be a fun one to see Aoki, who put on one hell of a show in his last fight back in the octagon. Really solid scrap here for October 12th. We have Jonathan Pierce and Pat Sabatini. Really big fight for these guys where they're at right now. October 19th, we have two-time tough champion Brad Katona taking on Gene Matsumoto. November 2nd in Canada, we have three more bouts that were announced. We have Sergey CD taking on Garrett Armfield. Mike Malott taking on Trevin Giles, and then Ayman Zahabi taking on Pedro Munoz. So some really quality fights for the Canadian fighters. Excited to see Malott's rebound and what Zahabi could do against a stud veteran Pedro Munoz. December 14th, we have Tracy Cortez taking on Miranda Maverick. That was the original bout that Tracy had set up before she got elevated to fight Rose in the main event. So huge test here for Miranda Maverick. And then at UFC 308, we have Miktabek Oralbai and Mateusz Rebecki. Really big opportunity for Oralbai to come onto the scene in Abu Dhabi. And then UFC 309, we have Nikita Krylov, long-awaited return, taking on Azamat Murzakanov, who has really been on a roll, which should be good. And this weekend's Apex card was the Ultimate Fighter Championships. And sadly, I believe this happened after weigh-ins or maybe even the day of the fight. Zigamontis Ormaska and Nathan Fletcher, two guys that got contracts that weren't obviously fighting in the finale. Zigamontis was supposed to fight in the semifinals, pulled out because the cheekbone fracture. But Nathan Fletcher had a health issue, so that's off. But they have already rescheduled it to September 7th because there is no card this weekend. So they will be back. So I'm really excited for that fight. Put a little damper on the card this past weekend. And then former undefeated flyweight prospect Muhammad Mokaev re-signing with Brave. I thought with PFL announcing stuff about the flyweight division that might be the case. But that just shows you how, you got to respect your boss or else you're in a tough spot. Moving on, we had the Road to the UFC finals taking place at the Makua, China event November 3rd. The finals now after the semifinals this past week. We have Kuru Shahata at flyweight taking on Dong-Hun Choi. In bantamweight, we have Su Young Yu taking on Bergang Gillespie. In featherweight, Ku Kangji taking on Ki Bin. And then in women's strawweight, Feng Xiaokan and Shi Ming. So we got women's strawweight, men's featherweight, bantamweight, and flyweight. And then we also had PFL action on Friday. This time the welterweights and featherweights going at it. As I expected, Brendan Loughnane with a very close split decision victory over Kai Kamaka. Kai Kamaka battled the entire fight, but every round, Brendan was really leading the way, leading the dance, and was taking control. And then we had Magomed Umolatov with the unanimous decision over Neiman Gracie. I did expect Umolatov to win, but I did not expect Gracie to do so well with his striking. I thought he looked pretty solid. And another very close decision, we had Timur Kizriev with a split decision over Gabriel Braga. Gabriel gave him a good battle, but Timur was leading the volume, really good kicks. In the rematch from the last the last playoff, we had Shamil Musayev with the unanimous decision over Murad Ramazanov. So Murad was able to go to decision without getting finished this time, but Shamil won again. We had Mahmoud Berkamov with a split decision over Ray Cooper, and Enrique Barzola with the unanimous decision over Tyler Diamond. All decisions, again, no finishes, but the Loughnane, Umolatov, and Kizriev fights were solid. PFL really been killed in the playoffs with these decisions, but we do have some new names battling in for the finals. Loughnane being back in the playoff run, and then some former Bellator fighters as well. Week 3 of the Contender Series, we had middleweight Andrei Pulyayev with unanimous decision over Liam Anderson to earn a contract. The announcers, I don't watch film on these guys coming into Contender Series, but we're talking about Pulyayev putting on the best performance of his career. I mean, he was striking, battling, long, lengthy fighter, should be a fun middleweight prospect. A really solid fight. We had Bogdan Grod with a split decision over Michael Aswell. Phenomenal, grinded out bout. It was just a war. These guys exhausted each other out. Bogdan earned a contract, and Dana White said in the post-fight interview that any opportunities for someone dropping out, they will give Oswell a chance to get another opportunity. We had Marco Tulio with a round 2 TKO with a spinning body kick that hit the liver. TKO and Matthew Duclos earning a contract there as well. Tulio looking pretty solid. We had Malcolm Wellmaker and Bantamweight put on an absolute show with a round 1 knockout over Adam Bromhald and earning a contract. He reminded me a lot of the Sugar Show, being very focused in the flow state, calm, cool, and collected, hardly breathing, really fast twitch, really good defense, reacting and dodging shots, and just very precision in his striking, and landed a big power shot to get the finish. Wellmaker is a prospect I will be keeping my eyes on, absolutely. And then we had former collegiate wrestler Nick Piccinini with a split decision victory over Jack Duffy. But much like myself, Dana White said, hey, we are going to have you guys rematch if you accept like week 10, because I thought Jack Duffy personally won, and I think he deserves the opportunity. And I do think if Jack Duffy won that fight, they would have gave him that opportunity for a UFC contract. But I am really excited for this next week of the Contender Series because we have Red Hawk Academy's own Montana alum, Great Falls, 3-time state champ wrestling, Tommy McMillan, a.k.a. Tommy Gunn, being able to fight for the next week. against a very high prospect who's moving up in weight class that is a grappling heavy fighter. I think he's only like 5'4". Tommy is almost 6 foot, just like Sean, lanky fighter for the division. So I'm really interested to see how that's going to play out. But let's talk about the Apex event that happened this weekend. UFC Fight Night Vegas 96. I went 6-5 in my picks. Overall, we're at 385 wins, 194 losses, 7 no contests or draws. And on the year, I'm at 192 wins, 108 losses, 4 no contests or draws. If I could recap the card, to be honest, I thought the card did better. I think I gave it a preview of a 4 out of a 10. There was a lot of striking put on display here, a lot of very close, fought battles. Early, we had Wang Kong getting the violence off to a hot start. She is new to the UFC, former kickboxer known for beating, I think it was Valentina Shevchenko or somebody like that. But yeah, really came in, put on a show. And then we had some bloody tit-for-tat showdowns in the prelims, let alone the Ultimate Fighter performances. I thought the main card was all violence and a ton of fun. The main event showing out as well. The tough winners doing their thing. So I gave it a 7 out of 10 just because it didn't have a ton of star power. But the fights overall performed very well. Some fights that we did not break down. We had Wang Kong with that massive round 1 knockout over Victoria Leonardo. We had Vyacheslav Borshev with a split decision victory over James Yontop. These guys had to dig deep. They were beating each other up, gassed each other out. And then on short notice, Francis Marshall with a split decision victory over Denis Bazukja. Another hard-fought battle that went to the last bell. Both guys having their shots, and definitely both did well in the fight. For the Ultimate Fighter finales, we had Myron Santos with a round 2 knockout over Khan Offley. That's a fight I picked wrong. I did pick Francis, Vyacheslav, and Wang Kong, but I thought Khan Offley looked like the best fighter in the house. But Myron Santos, a long, rangy striker that is big for the division, struggled with weight. There was actually drama. If you show the photo of him making weight, they had the curtain because he was so close. Like, only the front part of his feet were on the scale to try to get some weight off. I would consider that cheating. I'm sure that does affect the weight. Regardless, he put on one hell of a show, controlled the entire first round, and then in the probably first minute of round 2, shut the lights off of a very good veteran, Khan Offley. I'm sure we'll see Khan in the UFC regardless. But Myron Santos, I think Bisping actually compared him to Anderson Silva with how calm he is, how reactive he is, and good at counter-striking. I think that's a little steep for my liking, but Myron Santos, very soft-spoken kid, being very violent with his power and striking. Then in featherweight, we had Ryan Loder with a round 2 knockout over Robert Valentin. And to be honest, Loder was very soft-spoken, grappling-heavy guy. He did not get a lot of TV time in the Ultimate Fighter house. And in his fights, he grappled his way to victory. Did not see him finishing one of the most violent, psycho, real character guys in Robert Valentin. And boy, did he put on a show. He's not just a grappler. He put that on display, and he looks Ultimate Fighter ready. Robert Valentine is a little wild of a child. He's, older in age. I would love to see him get some opportunities, though, because he's a fun fighter, and people will tune in for what he brings. But we'll kick it off with the one prelim fight we previewed. On the women's side of things, we had Jacqueline Cavalcanti with a split decision victory over Josanne Nunez. And this was actually a fight I got wrong. This fight literally was almost 3 identical rounds. Nunez would walk Jacqueline down. She's very short fighter compared to her, a little stockier. And as she would come in, she'd get hit with jabs. Jacqueline loved that left jab, maybe some leg kicks, and, a nice left hook, left jab, left hook as she'd close in distance. And Josanne, as she'd come, would do a fury of 3 to 4 punch combos. A couple of them would land, but then Jacqueline would circle, try to create distance, create that space, and then they would just do the dance all over again. And Jacqueline, with her jabs and her kicks, they weren't super powerful strikes each round, but they won the fight because she was landing consistent volume as Josanne was trying to close the distance. And, over 3 rounds, she was outpointing Nunez. I was interested to see and kind of was waiting for Cavalcanti to fire away some right power kicks because as she's circling left, the shorter fighter was in an opposite stance. Her body was wide open, never threw body kicks, never threw high kicks, especially when Nunez comes in. She ducks her head to put those Furies along. I was like, man, that's wide open, but I never saw that happen. And for Nunez, like even Paul Felder kept saying it on the play-by-play, like you would think that as Cavalcanti's circling left, she would try to, prepare something for her to walk into that. Again, it was 3 identical rounds. Josanne closing, ducking her head, combo. Cavalcanti getting out of the way, left jab, kick. It was just over and over and over. Lots of opportunities. I think just a little bit lack of IQ here. But big win for Cavalcanti. Statistically, Jacqueline landed 91 total insignificant strikes. Personally, I do not think every strike she landed was significant. That's what's weird about the statistics and how they calculate those. I would say maybe half of those were significant. A lot of them were touchy-feely. While Josanne landed 52 total insignificant. Josanne, I could see majority of hers being significant. She was throwing a lot of mustard behind those suckers. So regardless, you could see Jacqueline almost doubling up her total. And that's all it was kickboxing because there was nothing else done in that fight. Josanne now extends her losing streak to 2. She is 3-2 in the UFC since 2021. And Jacqueline extends her winning streak to 5. She's 2-0 in the UFC. So what's next? I would love to see Jacqueline take on Chelsea Chandler next. And for Josanne, she could square up with Haley Cohen in her next bout. Moving on into the main card, we had Gerald Mearshart with a round 2 submission via arm triangle choke over Edmund Shabazian. Performance of the night, 50 G's for GM3, man. And the start of this fight played more like you would expect. Edmund was having his way outboxing the older veteran GM3, forcing him back. He was even able to defend a takedown that GM3 tried to fire off. He was having the fight play out to his strengths. He got a little overzealous looking to get a finish, couldn't get the finish. So then in round 2, he rocked Gerald with a body shot that had him drop. He pounced on him and really went for it and probably gassed himself out, which he is known for gassing himself out. That's a big reason he has a lot of L's. And then Gerald was able to, as Edmund got back up, being gassed, just drop down and easily get a takedown. I mean, it was not a high-effort takedown whatsoever. And as Edmund fell on his back, he was able to sink in the easy arm triangle because Edmund didn't have a lot of energy to escape from his back. I love me an arm triangle. Bad look for Edmund. I'm sure he's got to be, feeling bad about this because he was very close to getting a finish. Statistically, Edmund landed 48 total insignificant strikes with 2 minutes and 21 seconds of control time. And Gerald landed 31 total, 21 of them significant. He had 1 takedown, although 6 attempts. So credit to Edmund for defending there. And he had a submission attempt as well. So Gerald extends his winning streak to 2. He is 3-3 since 2022. And Edmund starts a new losing streak. He drops to 2-2 since 2022. So what's next? Well, I would love to see Gerald take on another veteran, Paul Craig, in a nice veteran showdown. Both men should love that. And I think Edmund could try to rebound against Michael Oleksiejczuk. I think that would be a good, striking, violent affair. But moving on, we had Michael Morales with a round 1 knockout over the veteran Neil Magny. Performance of the night, 50 G's for Michael Morales. And boy, if you didn't know the power that Michael Morales possesses, now you know it was a highlight knockout. And we don't see very many people knocking Neil Magny out. He is as durable as they come. So, because of the knockout, this fight didn't last super long. Neil right out the gates as expected, got the younger Morales up against the cage, was looking to clinch with them, close that distance, but Morales was able to land a spinning elbow that rocked Neil, and as he was kind of pushing away from the cage. So once Neil got down to the ground, he just put on a ton of nasty ground and pound for a quick finish. Beautiful performance by Michael Morales. I guess this would be a TKO, not a full knockout. But statistically, Neal only landed 13 total, 5 significant strikes. He was 0 for 2 in takedown attempts. But he did have 2 minutes and 5 seconds of control time up against the cage. And Michael landed 39 total strikes, 35 of them significant. He got that knockdown in 1 minute and 16 seconds of control time. So Michael stays undefeated. He extends his winning streak to 17, 6-0 in the UFC. He enters the rankings at number 12. And Neal starts a new losing streak. He is an impressive 4-4 since 2022. At 37 years old, he is just active year in, year out. He stays in the rankings, but moves down 3 spots to 15. So what's next? I say give me Michael Morales and Vicente Luque. And for Neal, he could scrap with the veteran Nicholas Dalby, another appropriate veteran showdown that makes a ton of sense. Then in the women's co-main, we had Tabitha Ricci with a unanimous decision over Angela Hill. Not too shocked, but I did get this fight wrong. And as expected, these ladies went 0 to 100. They never slowed down the entire 15 minutes as these women put on one hell of a pace. And I saw that there was a lot of scorecards that had, Angela winning, Tabitha winning. It was a little bit more chaotic of a decision, although it was unanimous. But I do think that Tabitha won the fight. I understand and am very, understanding that Tabitha's punches don't pack a lot of punch. She's kind of, she's not doing a lot of damage with them, but they do score. And she was the fighter who was moving forward majority of the fight, controlling the center of the octagon, and was being the aggressor. Now, Angela's strikes, you could tell when they landed. Tabitha's were touchy, and her little furies, let's say this is Angela's face, she'd come just too short, maybe pop, very touchy-feely, but they're probably scoring majority of those combos because they're so close and so fast, you can't really tell. But they weren't very damaging. And Angela's strikes, you could tell. But surprising to me, Tabitha actually was the aggressor with the offensive wrestling, and she did have success. I thought Angela was going to do that, especially Angela watching Tabitha's fight against the veteran Tisha Pennington in her first fight back. When Tisha came forward and was being the aggressor with her combos, it pushed Tabitha back and she was having success there. But really, the very much younger fighter, Baby Shark, just wore out Hill a little bit as the fight went on. If Hill could have just let her hands fly and moved forward more like Tisha did, I think she could have stole those rounds and definitely won. But regardless, great performance by both women. It was fun to watch while it lasted. And the stats speak for that. Angela landed 140 total strikes, 112 of them significant, although she was 0 for 2 in takedown attempts. And Tabitha landed 140 total strikes as well. She had 11 less significant strikes at 101, but she had 3 takedowns and 4 attempts. So very successful. If she wanted the takedown, she got it. And she had over a round of control time, 5 minutes and 4 seconds of control time. So now Baby Shark extends her winning streak to 2. She is an impressive 5-1 since 2022. And she moves up 2 spots in the rankings to number 9. And Angela ends her 2-fight winning streak. She starts a new losing streak. She's an impressive 4-3 since 2022. 7 fights in 2 years, 39 years old. She moves down 2 spots in the rankings to number 11. So what's next? Well, Tabitha continues to skate by in her victories, but she is moving up the rankings. I think she continued to rise up and face former title contender Amanda Lemos, which would be a big test. And for Angela, she's really fought like everybody. She's been around. She's the OG. I think another appropriate, well-deserved veteran showdown would be against Karolina Kowalkiewicz. I'm surprised she hasn't faced her, so let's make that happen. Then in the main event, fight of the night, deservingly so. I did get the winner wrong, but golly, did he put on a display. Caio Borralho with the unanimous decision over Jared Cannonier. Fight of the night, 50 G's for the Fighting Nerds, El Capitan. And sometimes fighters have agendas. Borralho knew this entire night he was not going to grapple. He was going to show people that he could strike with the best of the best in the UFC. And he passed that test with flying colors. I mean, The very first round, obviously it was measured, right? It's a 5-round fight. The first round, both men came forward, but Kyle was more active. He landed more volume, and Jared just didn't throw enough to win the round. When he threw, he had success, but it's like he was setting something up. In round 2, Jared had confidence in his combos and let his hands fly more. He actually rocked Kyle, and personally, I think that if Jared would have followed up on it, because he was kind of, stumbling a little bit, I think that he could have done a lot more damage and potentially benefited himself for the rest of the fight. Of course, you don't want to go and empty the tank against a young guy who's shown durability unless the opportunity really presents itself. But he rocked him, and then he just stood there and gave Baraglio plenty of time to recover. I thought that was a real big miss and potentially what cost him the fight. But round 3 was a very back-and-forth round. But Kyle was the fighter pressuring Jared, which is a surprise a little bit. And he continued just to chop out Jared's lead leg as he was doing in round 1. Jared did land some big shots, but with about a minute left in the round, Kyle rocked Jared and had him wobbly. There was some clips that went viral. Somehow he was able to finish with the round and stay alive. It looked like he was out, fell down, and kind of woke back up. But at this point, I had it 2-1 Kyle clearly going into round 4, and Jared barely survived round 3. In round 4, it was actually a very back-and-forth tit-for-tat round. But Kyle, again, landed more volume. And I'm not sure if Jared slipped or he got knocked down. If the judge is saying it's a knockdown, that could obviously sway it. But it seems as though both men's cardio was continuing to go, was ready for five rounds. But the big question for me was, could Kyle do that? And it seemed like he was on his pace, easily on pace to do so. I did think in round 4, Jared landed more significant strikes. I'm not sure if it was enough to win the scorecards on the judges' scorecards, but I probably would have gave him round 4. But at this point, Kyle's clearly on his way to win unless Jared gets a finish. And in round 5, at the 2-minute mark, it looked like Jared was completely out. And then again, when he hit the mat, he came back to life. An amazing performance by Kyle. Dang near finished Jared a couple times. And it really showcased that he's ready for championship fights, the 5-rounders. He's got the cardio. He has the striking. Didn't even need to use the grappling. One brilliant, massive display for Kyle Baraglio, and the Fighting Nerds takeover continues. Now, statistically, Jared landed 83 total insignificant strikes, while Kyle landed 156 total, 153 of them significant, so like 70 more total, which is quite a bit. He had a submission attempt, 1 minute and 59 seconds of control time, and a knockdown. So Kyle extends his winning streak to 16. He's undefeated, 8-0 in the UFC, and he moves up 7 spots in the rankings to number 5. Prime time now for Kyle. And Jared extends his losing streak to 2. He's been fighting the gauntlet of the division. He's an even 3-3 since 2022, which 6 fights in 2 years. He's 40 years old. You got to give him credit. He moves down 2 spots in the rankings to number 7. So Baraglio's been calling for Izzy. I don't think Izzy's going to take that fight. So I'm saying give me Kyle Baraglio and Marvin Vettori. I think that's the appropriate top 5 matchup. Winner can get a title shot. And for Jared, he could fight veteran Chris Curtis, which I think would still be an awesome showcase, and a little veteran on veteran. I think these veterans deserve that sometimes, so I'm all for it. But again, what's next? We have a weekend off, so enjoy your college football. Again, if you're watching the ASU-Wyoming game, check out for me. I'll be on the Wyoming sideline. And then we have another Apex event, solid event. It's headlined by Gilbert Burns and Sean Brady. It's definitely better than this past weekend's, although the past weekend delivered a lot better than I expected. And then in the UFC schedule, after that, we have UFC 306 at the Sphere in Las Vegas. I almost forgot to tell you guys on Monday this week, just to give you some background, UFC 306, every time I get pay-per-view events, which I've been to about 6 across the country now, you want to get pre-sale if you can. Try to get them. They're usually a little bit cheaper at that point in time because based on demand, which UFC's in high demand right now, the prices could get a lot higher. Well, UFC 306 really crushed my dreams because I really wanted to see the Sugar Show take over the Sphere, the one and only event. Dana White's hyping it up. Let's see if it lives up to it. How cool of a memory and experience would that be? And it's just like the nosebleeds, the very high 400, which I know there's not really a bad seat in there. Come to find out, actually the 100 level on the edges, there's obstructed views of some of the Sphere, so you don't want to sit there. So the 400 is really not bad. But they were starting at $5,000. That's Super Bowl ticket prices for high-level teams like Cowboys, Steelers. Like, come on, the UFC is on crack, right? Weeks and weeks go by. The price doesn't change. Maybe it goes down $1,000. Then all of a sudden, closer to the fight, the tickets start dropping. I'm a pro game time ticket purchaser. It shows the fees, very competitive price. Originally, I said if it gets to $1,200 or less, I might think about it. But then I was like, that's still too much. I paid $900 to go to Miami for one of the better cards of all time in UFC 299. I know this card is solid, but it doesn't have that kind of fame potential. Tickets kept going down. On game time, it never got under $1,100. But as I was looking on Ticketmaster, tickets went down to $850 a person, including all fees. And what the big difference was is usually when you go to Ticketmaster, there's a ton of fees. And when you click on the question mark of what are these fees, it says the fees are to pay the promotion, the sport, and Ticketmaster or the venue, something like that. And for the Sphere, it's the most fees I've ever seen. You go to your cart for 2 tickets, it would show you $1,200, and then there's like $500 in fees. So that increases your ticket price a lot. Well, it showed the ticket being $800, and there was only $80 of fees for 3 tickets. So I secured my tickets. Your boy is going to the Sphere. I am so excited for that. And then we have another week off in September, and then we close out September with a fight night card in Paris, headlined by Money Moicano and BSD Benoit Saint-Denis. Then the next pay-per-view will be the Alex Pereira Khalil Roundtree 307 in Salt Lake City. 2 more fight nights in between, UFC 308 in Abu Dhabi. And then UFC 309 will be wrapping up in November in Madison Square Garden. And then UFC 310 will be happening back in Las Vegas at T-Mobile. Regardless, what a show. I'm so excited to get some UFC action back. UFC back in action and get some of these pay-per-views. And the Sphere is coming. I'll be talking a lot about that. Regardless, I'm your host, Shane Gillette, episode 63. See you next week.